I'm Vinnie Politan, the subject of my investigation, the death of Tyre Nichols. It was a case that made huge headlines. Tyre was stopped by Memphis police, and what happened after he tried to flee has resulted in murder charges for police. And it was all caught on camera. Here's the story. On January 7th, 2023, 29-year-old Tyre Nichols was pulled over by Memphis police officers claiming reckless driving. What should have been a routine stop spiraled into chaos. Nichols fled on foot, unarmed and frightened. Officers pursued and caught him a few blocks away. What prosecutors alleged happened next was a savage, prolonged beating by 5 members of the now disbanded Scorpion unit. They say Nichols was punched, kicked, pepper sprayed, and struck with a baton while restrained, offering no resistance. He cried for his mother during the assault, which took place just feet from his home. He died 3 days later. The officers are charged with second-degree murder, among other felonies. Prosecutors point to disturbing body cam video and statements that suggest deliberate brutality. The defense argues the officers believe Nichols posed a threat and that their actions were within the bounds of duty, not malice. They claim the situation escalated unpredictably. The case now stands as a flashpoint in the national conversation on police reform, justice, and accountability. So it's rare in a murder trial that you have a video of the entire alleged murder. And you do in this case because it's police officers who've been charged and they have body cameras. And that video is an important part, if not the most important part of this case in trying to understand what happened, why it happened, and ultimately for the jury, what it all means. So what we're going to do during the course of this hour is go through the different parts of what happened and take a really close look at the video. Some of this video is going to be very graphic, and I'm warning you at the top of the show, and I'll warn you again before I play the very graphic parts of the video. But I want to begin here because it begins as a traffic stop. You have a suspect driving a car stopped by police. Let's take a look at what happens.
Damn, I didn't do anything. Hey, I didn't hurt you. All right. On the ground. All right. Hey, you don't do that, okay? Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Okay. I think you changed your All right, I'm on the ground. Lay down. Down. Please change the I think I tase you. Get on the ground. Lay down. One. Now. All right. Break your.
So like I said, we're going to take it piece by piece. That is not the alleged beating, that part of the video. This is the initial stop and what happened as officers approached the car and the defendant, not the defendant, the suspect at the time, the victim in this trial, was taken from the car. That brings us to the first question in our investigation. Why was Tyre Nichols pulled from the car? Now, to answer that question, I'm not going to ask a lawyer. I'm not going to ask a prosecutor, a defense attorney. We need people who have actually done the work. Joining me tonight, former NYPD officer, retired Nassau County Lieutenant and Commanding Officer Mike Gould, also with us, retired DEA Special Agent, and even more importantly for this case, former Memphis police officer Ted Golden. Thank you both for being here. I requested both of you to be on this program specifically because I think your perspective is the most important for us and the public to try to understand and make some sense as to what happened here. So let's begin with this first question, which is, why was Tyre Nichols pulled from the car? I'm going to start with the former Memphis officer tonight, Mike. Ted, Give me your thoughts, your initial thoughts about the initial stop and pulling Tyre from the motor vehicle.
There was nothing about the way they approached him that was standard operating procedure. When you pull somebody over for a traffic violation, you approach them, you're courteous, and you ask them either for their driver's license or to step out of the car. Turn off the car and step out of the car. They didn't do that. So from step one, this was not a standard police stop. It was a bunch of vagabonds that didn't have anything else to do than harass some poor guy. When you look at them with their hands on him, they got his arm. That's an arm bar, handcuff, get him up. If you want to do that, that's fine. But what they did is so far out of scope of how we're supposed to handle ourselves that it's ridiculous. There's nothing about what they did that's standard. Everything they did from square one was totally unnecessary, inappropriate, and it was at a level it shouldn't have been. If he was an armed suspect in an armed robbery or a rape, or he was fleeing the scene of an incident where they're pursuing him, that's the way you approach him. But this being a standard traffic stop for reckless driving, unacceptable.
Mike, what are you seeing here? Why do you think they ripped him out of the car?
This is couldn't agree more with Ted. This is an abomination. It's a stain on law enforcement. You know, Vinnie, law enforcement makes 10 million arrests a year. 99.9% safely without consequence. This was, again, it should have, if it ended there, it would have been bad enough. He's surrendering, he's on the ground, end of story. It would still be excessive force, but in my opinion, just in that regard. You don't have to pull people out of the car. You didn't do, this was a traffic stop, speeding or reckless driving. The U.S. Supreme Court already dictates the use of force by law enforcement. And the primary prong is the severity of the crime. There was no severity of this crime. This happens every day. People flee from law enforcement for a variety of reasons. Sometimes just mental illness. Sometimes they just want to get away. They're afraid. Sometimes they're guilty. But as Ted said, there are police procedures that you take a person out of a car. It should never escalate. They're supposed to de-escalate. If it doesn't go any further, this was excessive force, but we do know the outcome is even worse than this.
Right, and we're going to take it piece by piece of all of this. Let's take a listen to the prosecutor here talking about these particular officers because they're part of this Scorpion unit. Let's listen.
All 5 of these men that are charged in this crime are police officers. They work together as part of the team that's called the Scorpion unit. That's not a bad thing. It's data-driven policing. Okay, so they send these guys aren't assigned to a particular precinct. Okay, and they're not assigned to like homicide or something like this. They're assigned to what's called the Scorpion unit. They're sent out to various areas that may be having a problem with whatever it is. I'll send unit out to make traffic stops and do sort of anti-crime suppression type activities.
All right, Ted, when you were in Memphis, did they have anything like a Scorpion unit back then? And what are your thoughts about the Scorpion unit and its purpose and its usefulness?
As a rookie police officer, I was assigned to a rape detail out near the airport where an individual had been raping people for like 3 to 4 years. They pulled us from the precincts. We came together, and our intent was to locate this guy, catch him. And as believe it or not, the first night out, we actually encountered him. And as a result, he was arrested. They intentionally arrested him without the officers who were involved in the chase initially, the identification of this guy, because they didn't want us to do what these guys did. They arrested him, and I found out on television. So you do have specialized crime suppression units that work in high crime areas, and they in particular are looking at people that are involved or engaged in things that we know, like armed robberies, snatch and grabs, taking people's cars, hijacking folks in their cars, those kind of things. That's what you're looking for. Someone, quote unquote, reckless driving, that's a patrol car's responsibility. And if indeed it was reckless driving, the smartest thing for them to have done was to follow him and call for a marked unit to handle it and then go back to their crime suppression responsibilities. What they did was totally outlandish, out of control, and basically it's barbaric. There's no other way to describe it, because when you see something like this, you want to know why in the world they're going crazy with this. When I was on that detail, Vinny, I saw a man get hit in the head with a baseball bat, and they killed him. But because I was in my personal car going to the location where we were doing the rape detail, I had to call in and let somebody else handle the situation, and I didn't get involved because I wasn't in uniform, didn't have a badge. I had a badge, but wasn't in uniform, didn't have a blue light. It was just something I had to deal with, watching somebody get hit with a baseball bat and knowing he was dead. But I had to leave him there at 11:30 at night because we started at midnight at a major intersection in Memphis. And they did get the guy who did it, but I wasn't in a position to support it because, again, I wasn't in a marked unit. I didn't have a blue light. All I had was my badge in my pocket and a pistol on my hip and plain clothes.
Mike Gould, do you think there's a place for these types of specialized units, crime suppression, to go into very dangerous neighborhoods and do some work?
Absolutely. So targeted patrol is nothing unusual. I mean, I would say the name Scorpion alone, just implies some kind of aggressiveness to me. It shouldn't be used. Back in my day, working in NYPD, we had something called the Rat Patrol, the Robbery Apprehension Team. And they got rid of that in the 80s just because of the implication. They were aggressive, and rightfully so. They were dealing with rashes of robberies, and they'd show up in an unmarked van. But I'll tell you what's missing here is supervision. These specialized teams are supposed to be specially trained and specially supervised. So I haven't been following this all along, but where the supervisor should have called off this vehicle pursuit. Most departments have very strict vehicle pursuit guidelines. They don't allow it for reckless driving because the consequences of a 2-ton car, a projectile going through streets, is more of a danger than anything else. So in this case, I'm guessing they could have taken the plate number, which we would do normally, and get an arrest warrant and go arrest them for something. But this, So no, the targeted patrol all the time. We're following crime patterns, and we put undercover, or I should say, plainclothes police officers, but they're highly trained. So I don't know where the supervision was here. That's more troubling to me. Is there a systemic problem with this police department?
All right, our experts are staying with us. Coming up next, how does a fleeing suspect impact the officer's mindset? Is Karen Reed a killer girlfriend?
She's guilty.
Or the scapegoat in an elaborate cover-up?
Karen Reed was framed!
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Defendant stated repeatedly, I hit him, I hit him.
She may end up taking the stand. Her first trial ended with a hung jury.
They haven't proven anything.
Will a jury finally agree on a verdict?
We know who did it.
The Karen Reed murder retrial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
If we don't create some long-lasting change out of what we've seen in such a short period of time, then we will fail as a country. We know that policing in some respects is broken, and it's our job to fix it.
That's Antonio Romanucci, the attorney for the family of Tyre Nichols. He also represented family members associated with in the George Floyd case as well. Talking about some of the changes that he's been looking for. Now, in this case, we're going through piece by piece the actual videos of the alleged murder is what they're charged with. So we're going piece by piece. We saw him pull him out and make the initial stop and pull Tyre Nichols out of the car, put him down on the ground. The next piece I'm going to show you is what changes, I think, a lot of things going on here is that Tyre Nichols gets up, is able to escape, and then runs away and flees. Let's take a look at that part of the video.
You guys are really doing a lot right now.
Bro, lay down.
I'm just trying to go home.
Lay down.
Man, if you don't lay down. I am on the ground.
on your
stomach.
I got you.
Please. Okay. Back up. I'm not doing it. Stay. Please. I hope they stop us. Smith is calling for other cars because him and Mark are chasing them.
Coming out 30, we see him. We're on foot, presumably southbound on Ross.
So now you've got a suspect who has escaped custody, is now running away from police, and now police, you saw, some of them are in the physical chase of running after this fleeing suspect, which brings us to the next question in our investigation. How does a fleeing suspect impact the officers' minds? Okay? You've got someone, you rip him out of the car, you put him on the ground, a bunch of officers, he's able to get up and get away. How does him escaping and fleeing impact the mindset of the officers? Still with me, former NYPD officer, retired Nassau County Lieutenant Commanding Officer Mike Gould, and retired DEA Special Agent, former Memphis police officer Ted Golden. Mike, how does this change the mindset of the officers in that moment when the suspect now gets up and is running away?
Right. Well, we got to go back to the initial the beginning of this. First of all, they should have had him. They had him on the ground. There was 2, 3, 4, God knows how many officers were there. So how he got up and escaped. People escape, again, for many reasons. Mental illness, there's all kinds of things. The question is, what do they have probable cause to even arrest this guy for? So, Vinnie, this is a day, and this happens every night. When I was a patrol supervisor, these types of things, car pursuits, suspects running away, this is a everyday occurrence. How you react to it. As a patrol supervisor, my job was to monitor these things over the radio. So the initial stop, if I take into consideration, what are they chasing him for? Reckless driver. What was the speed? Is he just, you terminate it. Just terminate. We talk about getting somebody another day. They know, they have his car. They know who he is. So this was, again, the adrenaline was running. You could hear it, and it's bad all the way around. Nothing good here is happening.
All right, Ted, you're an officer. You're on the streets. You've got someone. You seem to have him in custody. There's not just one officer there. There's a group of officers there, and somehow the suspect is able to get out and then run away. What now is going through the minds of the officers who were there? How does that fact of a suspect running away impact their mindset?
Well, 2 things first, Vinny. When you get ready to tase somebody, you got to get hands off of it, because if he gets tased, you get tased. That's standard. But it's also not advisable to tase someone who was in close proximity to other people. Second thing, they sprayed him and sprayed each other. So here we got a suspect who's on the ground, and they've done 2 things that are inappropriate for close contact. Sprayed him with pepper spray and hit him with a taser. So that explains how he got away, because they got sprayed and they had to get their hands off of him to let him get tased. Now, neither situation was required. They chose to do that. They were in complete control of this 145, 50-pound man. He's like a rag doll. There's no way they didn't have control of him. So now the third thing is this: when someone flees from you, the first thing in your mind is, I got to get this sucker. I won't get him. He has pissed me off. I'm going to get it. Clearly, he outran them because, again, they were suffering from the exposure to the spray. But your adrenaline's pumping, and you're really pissed off. And unfortunately, when that happens, somebody's probably going to get an ass whooping. Plain and simple, if you can catch them. Most of the time when we chased people in Memphis, when I was on day shift especially, we had a plan to break up the crap game. We had a plan to get the guys off the corner. Somebody got downwind, and when they turned the corner, we were standing there waiting for him. You didn't just go chasing the guy because he was running from you. The other thing is this: in the darkness, on the color of darkness, once they cross the street with cars running, I'm gonna catch you another day. I gotta let you go. I ran a guy, he darted across Lamar Avenue, 6 lanes of traffic on the midnight shift. I let him go because I wasn't gonna get run over by a car trying to chase somebody who shoplifted in the grocery store. It's just not worth it. So these guys have elevated the situation to something that it should not have been, and now they're pissed off, and the consequences we see later.
Let's take a look here. This is where the officers speak with Tyre's parents.
I'm telling you, that is not my son.
Right, yes, ma'am. So I'm one of the officers.
wherever it is. Yeah, I'm a CIT officer, so, you know, I specialize in people who, not saying that they have substance abuse problems, stuff like that. But from the way he was fighting, he had to have been on something.
Well, that's what I'm saying, sir, because my son is not, he don't, he live with us, first of all. He go to work every day. And so for him to have did something like that, something triggered it or something was put in his drink or something.
All right, Mike, what are you doing with information like this from the suspect's parents? At the time, the suspect, now the victim in the case.
Yeah, so Vinny, yeah, you know, people on drugs, they do have extraordinary strength. So I respect the fact that a 150-pound person can have the strength of 2 or 3 people. But that wasn't the case here. This wasn't a lone officer in the middle of a rural street that pulled him over and got into a hand-to-hand fight. And I agree with Ted before. I wasn't aware of all the pepper spray and all of these things are not necessary. They actually screwed this whole thing up. And that's not uncommon. I see that quite frequently. You know, I testify in court on the use of force pretty regularly. And most times my hope is to exonerate police officers when they do the right things. But this is very typical. They were hands-on. He was on the ground. So if they needed 4 more guys, 5 more guys, it's like a football huddle. They just subdue his hands. That's what's dangerous to people, hands and feet, basically. But it was a done deal. And then they kind of screwed it up. And they shouldn't get pissed off. We're human. We do get mad. We get mad. But a professional police officer in 2025 has to go through extensive training to de-escalate this stuff. Your ego goes out the window. You de-escalate. You use what they call objective reasonableness in the use of force, and it has to be proportional. So they could have got hit. They could have got an arrest warrant for reckless driving or whatever the problem was.
We're out of time for now, but we got more coming up. Up next, why did the officers beat Tyre Nichols? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the death of Tyre Nichols. Tyre was stopped by police, escaped and fled, but when he was caught, things spiraled out of control. Tyre died and 5 officers were charged with murder. Here's the story. On January 7th, 2023, Tyre Nichols was pulled over by members of the Memphis Police Department's Scorpion Unit. Officers claimed he was driving recklessly, but what followed was anything but routine. According to prosecutors, after Nichols briefly fled on foot, officers caught him and delivered a merciless beating, punching, kicking, and striking him with a baton while he was restrained. Body camera video shows Nichols crying out for his mother, attempting to shield himself, unarmed and defenseless. Prosecutors say the assault was excessive, deliberate, and entirely unjustified, leading to Nichols' death 3 days later. They've charged 5 officers with second-degree murder and other crimes. The defense, however, argues the officers believed Nichols was under the influence and resisting arrest. They claim the situation escalated rapidly and that the officers' actions, though forceful, were in response to a perceived threat. The beating has sparked nationwide outrage with demands for accountability and sweeping police reform, echoing across the nation. Throughout the program, we've been taking a look at the body-worn cameras of the officers that night and the video that exists of what happened to Tyre Nichols. Now, we've gotten to the part where he's pulled out of the car. He gets up. He flees on foot. The next part of the video is the most graphic part of the video, the most disturbing part of the video. I want to warn you ahead of time, but we're going to show it to you because it is evidence in the case, and it actually is what this case is ultimately about. What happened to Tyre Nichols when police captured him or recaptured him on the streets of Memphis. So first, I'm going to show you the body-worn camera. And then we're going to take a look from a different vantage point. Again, I'm going to warn you, this is difficult to watch, but this is the reality of what happened.
Watch out!
Watch out! Get out of here! Mom! Hey. Give me your hands! Give me... Okay, all right. Give me... Give me... All right. Okay. All right. Huh? Man, give me your hands, bro. Give me your hands. Watch out. Spray your eyes again. Hey, give me your hands, bro. Watch out. Spray. Give me your hands, bro. Give me your hands.
Watch out! Watch out! Listen here! My light go, bro.
He got me. I was he high as a kite. Yo, I was good. You sit up for us. I hit that man with so many pieces in it. Come on. Oh, sorry, bro. I hit it, bro.
Now, sometimes on the body-worn camera, because it's so chaotic and the camera's moving, you don't capture everything, but I wanted you to hear what was happening as much as we could play and not beep out. So you understand, there's another camera that captures this. It's on a pole on the street, and you can clearly see everything. Now, there's no audio associated with this, so what we're gonna do is you're gonna hear the prosecutor describing what is happening as you were watching it from this vantage point of a camera that has a wide shot of everything that is happening to Tyre Nichols.
And you'll see first what is a catastrophic soccer-type kick to his head. Then Smith having us down. You'll see Martin with a very strong kick to his head. Tyrese would collapse a little further on the ground. And you'll see Martin kick him again in the head and in the face. You won't see Tyre Nichols throw a punch. You won't see him kick. And Mills' baton strikes Tyre's arm. He'll tell you it himself. Just because he was mad. 1, 2, 3 times. Tyre is purely and 100% a victim, and those men have him in prison falsely while they keep on hitting him and kicking him.
And that brings us to the next question in our investigation, and it's an important one. Why did the officers beat Tyre Nichols? Why? Joining me to help answer this question, retired DEA Special Agent, former Memphis police officer Ted Golden, and joining us, psychotherapist, CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacey. Ted, first, from your perspective, what could happen that is going to make an officer go rogue, a group of officers go rogue like this and engage in this beating? Can you even answer that?
Yeah, I can answer it. It's normal and acceptable behavior. They've done this before. They've gotten away with it before. Their actions show that their close proximity limits the visibility of the camera. The hero in this situation is the person who moved the pole camera to show what they were doing in a wide angle, because close proximity, you really can't see the punches. You really can't see the kicks. You can't see the roundhouse swing of that baton, except for that wide angle. When they're close to him, all you can see is the movement, and that's intentional on their part. They know how to use the camera angles to limit what you can visibly see, okay? And then last but not least, once the man is handcuffed, you don't put your hands on it. You stand him up and you get him some medical attention. I've been in fights with folk. The biggest fight I had was with a 145-pound man on PCP. And it was two of us that had his arms trying to get him handcuffed. We were about the same size, 250 pounds, and we could not bend his arms. But we were smart enough to know if we stopped him from breathing, we could get the arms behind us, gave him a gut punch, count of 3, and then we pulled his arms back and hooked him up. And then that was the last time he got hit. But he was 145 pounds, and he was on drugs. This man wasn't on drugs. He's calling for his mama. So for them, it's normal and acceptable behavior for them to be this way. That's what they do. They've done it before. I promise you, if you go back and find other folks that they have victimized before, they have done this before. It's not something that it's part of their characters, who they are. They're bullies. They're rogue police officers, and it's shameful what they did to this man, especially when they were operating under the color of law.
Dr. Janie Lacey, from your perspective, how does someone go from signing up to be a police officer, extremely dangerous job, presumably like Ted Golden, you sign up because you want to serve and protect, and end up on the other side of all of this?
Well, first, Vinnie, I agree with Ted, right? There's this normalization and there's probably this familiarity with this behavior that they've been there before. But I also consider the group dynamic, right? So they're in this specialized Scorpion unit where they probably had their own subculture and their own values. And when we think about the psychology of group membership in particular, it can create a very powerful conformity pressure, right? So especially when we consider police culture, there's strong in-group loyalty. They probably had this brotherhood and they had these shared values. So this creates an environment where, especially as I agree with my co-panelists, right? If there's this rogue officers are going to prioritize the conformity of the group norm over any independent judgment. And when we think about that diffusion of responsibility where the individual accountability, it's going to go away in this group setting. And then as we heard the prosecutor in the trial talk about, the officers describe their frustration and their anger, and they were full of adrenaline. So after he ran from the initial traffic stop, this created this emotional, state primed for violence. And especially, when we consider that this case shows the classic signs of this escalation cycle, right? We see the initial resistance when he was running, and then this triggered to the officers this heightened emotional response, and then their aggressive pursuit that just only furthered the tension for them. And this created this feedback loop that we see. And as we were watching the footage that you were showing, and if we listen to some of the dialogue that's been reported, there's been reported that they were bragging about some of the actions, about the incident. And one, I believe, was saying that he hit him with a straight haymaker, which, suggests this disturbing emotional release. And they had pride in this violence, which I agree became normal in that sense. And then they, said, this perceived threat to authority. And then it created this whole loop that triggered that challenge to authority, which then in this Scorpion group justified in their mind some of their non-compliance as far as their violence. So it was probably very familiar to them. But this is the first time, obviously, it's on a stage for them to be judged and held responsible.
Ted, do you think there's a difference? Because it's a group of 5. We keep talking about a group. And when there are co-defendants in most trials, we look at everyone's role. And sometimes it's a little different. The culpability may be different. In a setting like this, do you think it is possible to distinguish the actions of one versus another? Or do you see them all together the same?
When you look at the thing that we call conspiracy, when 2 or more people agree to violate the law, you got 5 people that have entered into a conspiracy to just rid this man of his own life in any way possible. And they're holding him, restraining him for the man that hit him with a baton. They're just as guilty as the person swinging the baton. They're just as guilty as the guy who stomped him in the head. They're just as guilty as the guy who threw the haymaker, because they made no effort to stop him, to hold him back, to restrain them. You're responsible. Somebody should have had a calmer head. And even worse than that, there should have been a supervisor there by then. There's no way somebody shouldn't have gotten there in a supervisor capacity and told them, okay, back off. Back off. Let's just take him into custody. It never happened. And then when they did show up, they still didn't do anything. When you look at this man's injuries and how badly he was beaten and brutalized, you wouldn't shoot a dog this way, okay? Even when you slaughter animals, you have mercy. You shoot them in the head and slit their throats and it's done. You don't sit there and pound and beat on them. This is inhumane. This is like Dr. King's talk about a man's inhumanity to man. There's a limit to what you should do. And I can witness this for you. I was on surveillance here in Atlanta when the Red Dog unit was chasing a guy. And I can tell you right now, I sat in my car and I waited for it to be over with. I had just gotten out of court, had a shirt and tie on, and they said, here comes Red Dog chasing somebody. They chased that guy, they caught him, they brought him back. He wasn't dripping with blood. He wasn't stumbling. He actually had changed clothes. He had another set of clothes on trying to hide from him. But they were able to bring him down. This Scorpion unit was modeled after Red Dog, who also had some issues here in Atlanta. So the thing we got to realize is this. When you have folk in those kind of groups, what you've got to do is make sure that there's somebody that's got some common sense and knows how to act and knows when to turn it off and when to turn it on. And unfortunately, all of them were turned up. Nobody knew how to show restraint. And here's the thing that people are missing about these videos.
Ted, unfortunately, that's my cue. We're out of time. Ted Golden, your insight, so appreciated. Dr. Janie Lacey's going to stay with us. Still to come, why did the officers react this way?
How do you explain it? Two teenagers, they go from zero to the worst crime anyone can imagine.
She wanted to get her mom out of her life, to kill her.
You turned to murder.
Yes.
You are a shrewd operator.
I'm done with this interview. You're trying to make me seem like I'm a monster, and I'm not. Let me out.
Interview with a Killer. New episode, Sunday at 8 on Court TV.
He was a human pinata. It was an unadulterated, unabashed, nonstop beating of this young boy for 3 minutes.
Oh my God.
So the beating itself and the video of the beating obviously was a major factor in why people reacted the way they did to what happened to Tyre Nichols. But there was a little bit more to this. I'm going to show you another piece of the video, and this is in the aftermath. This is what the officers did in the aftermath of the beating of Tyre Nichols. Take a look. If you look closely, you will see a little fist pump, almost like a celebration in that moment. That was very troubling for a lot of people. For a lot of people. Brings us to the next question in our investigation. And it's about the aftermath. Why did the officers react this way in that moment? Here with me, former NYPD officer, retired Nassau County Lieutenant and Commanding Officer Mike Gould, and still with us, psychotherapist, CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacey. Mike, what are your thoughts there? People talked a lot about this, that there was a sense of like congratulating each other for what had just occurred. Why do you think that was part of the reaction here?
Yeah, well, I agree with Dr. Lacey in the previous segment. This is a subculture, so these guys are supposed to be specialists. It's like, but they're acting like a football team, an NFL football team with human lives. So why did they act like that? Their ego was ahead of them. How dare this person run from us? We're going to get him. We get him. We're going to beat the hell out of him. So this is predatory behavior. This is rogue, predatory, inexcusable behavior. And I take this personally. Frankly, it makes me sick because this is my profession. And this is why our country is polarized against law enforcement in many cases. There's one incident, like I said, it's disruptive, it's wrong on every level, and somebody should have stopped it. It's like watching a bar fight. Just at least intervene for a minute and hold somebody back, but they were all really participating.
Dr. Janie Lacey, so this celebration, this fist bump, and then some other aspects of it troubled the public a lot. And can you explain why they would react this way without really the acknowledgement of what had happened to another human being as a result of what they did with their own hands and feet and batons?
Well, Vinnie, if I'm correct, I remember during the trial, one officer testified that the MPD officers regularly inflicted what I believe they called a run tax. So they know that they use unjustified violence to punish anyone that ran from police. So we know that that suggested that normalized behavior within that department culture. And the Scorpion unit that those officers belonged to, they were specifically designed, if I'm correct, for aggressive police tacticals. So they create this environment where the success force might even be accepted. And then what I also see when I watch this video is almost this dehumanization, right? And we know that when police officers in particular, when they get into high stress situations, potentially they can engage in that psychological distancing from what has happened and this dehumanization perception. And they're viewing this subject as less than human. So when they're facilitating more extreme use of force, so when we're seeing the slap on the, the fist bumps and the hitting him on the back to almost like a congratulatory, right? That excessive force, which we have seen with the footage that we've seen tonight, is continued after he was even subdued, which suggests that those officers had psychologically detached from seeing his humanity and his suffering. And I believe some of the body cam footage that we also saw showed the officers, they were almost bragging about the beating. And
let's do this. Before we run out of time, let's take a quick listen to some of the officers talking afterwards.
Made me spray myself. Man, me too. Tased them. Hey, can you get my car, please? Y'all want me to bring him down there? No, I'm not bringing dude. Man, hell. Bring him down there. My eyes. I got sprayed. Oh, yeah, I just reopened my back up, bro. Where y'all see him, man? Right here. He was running through the yard, bro. This why I got him. I said I couldn't see no more. Well, you said that. We went through there. Yeah. Y'all said bald head, though. I was like, yeah. But then he started running, bro. He was wiping his face. I said he wiping his face. So that's it. Yeah.
Dr. Janie Lacey, we only have about 15 seconds left here. Could you give us the final word here?
Yeah, what we just saw is there was a disconnect from the human impact of their actions. And, their failure to intervene also showed that, they were disconnected from what happened. So their group think really overrode any ethical and professional obligations they had in helping him.
Big thank you, Dr. Janie Lacey and Mike Gould, for sharing your incredible insight. We appreciate it. Now, it's clear this should not have happened. When police make an arrest, the suspect should not die. Yes, they have the most difficult, dangerous job in the business, right? But they also have to act within the bounds of the law at all times and not lose control. The video tells a big part of the story, but there is one more big question still lingering. Did police murder Tyre Nichols? I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.